This one deals with the self in religion rather than overall ology or ism or corporate or unsolved or not useful or pejorative, derogatory, detracting, distracting, off base, incorrect. So one methodology deals with, it's all basically the same thing because they have this posit where to get to the unknown you have to surprise someone, and that's where the whole attack sphere comes in, and it deals with war, and it deals with like holy war, and it deals with rape. And so they think that if they do one of those things, and that later becomes the basis of Masonry, which is now extinct, by the way, it ran out by the precedent deals with a kind of invasion of the constitutionality of self, which deals with the initial space, which deals with tri-binary. And one old one that they do, if you ever heard that masturbating is bad, and then it goes to like immorality contexts, so like sexual immorality, and I guess that would progress to a kind of psychological immorality, so like the will is misinformed is where that comes in. And then you get to things like thinking it is the same thing as doing it, like it's said in the Bible sort of thing. And then above that, or from that, or through that, you get to that Saul point of view and context where you literally make no mistakes. It's good zone. And then you can walk that out. There's actually a holy field there that I wrote about, and it deals with Buddhist. It kind of pokes his head up and says, it's right here, here's the hole. And that's about it. Truth is a pathless land, sort of thing. So, I am the way, the truth, and the light, sort of thing. That's what that is and what that means. Then God is what you do not know, so you don't really go about attacking that or quantifying that or qualifying that. That's more like the you do not test the Lord your God sort of thing. And neither school of thought endorses that kind of demandance of provision sort of thing. That God should do something. You'll always lose that fight. And then you get that catalog sort of like the pecking order, but that catalog of the pecking order, that's your people worship, so that's your feudalism, and that's your bishops and whatever hierarchy. They already dealt with that. It's gotten better, but the thing that they're pushing now, that whole problems-based society, that everybody has to be street, that's really stupid. Priests have collars, doctors went to school, and that's kind of the whole that they're taking advantage of there. Everybody's the same thing. All you need is, a little Vicks Vapor rub on the chest, or some kind of garbage. There's no such thing as pneumonia. There's, it takes just stupid, makes the world dumb. Here's why. A little graph here. Read it backwards. So this is the Antichrist world over here. And then this one over here is Buddhism. So the Egyptology calendar kind of runs this way. So basically everything that's done with Church of Satan stuff deals with more or less everything after Buddhism. So it's a kind of Taoism, just without that as a singular thing, basically. So that's kind of your drift Buddhism context. I'm not worried about the hierarchy. I'm not worried about reputation. I'm not worried about politics. I'm not doing whole thing is about you being yourself in fruition and set, and that's your constitutionality. So it goes all the way to that point of your fullest and greatest and largest and smartest and highest and lowest extent. You are your lowest, technically, or there's nothing lower is a better way of saying it. It all kind of gains value, basically, by virtue of knowing it. But, anyway, more or less from here to here, this deals with, like, your quantum sphere. And there's an argument currently dealing with conversion. And more or less when you're doing anti-Antichrist, which would be like Satanism, or really anything on this grid moves you further away from Antichrist stuff. So if like Masonry, like Garbage DS from the KKK is the only thing that can be available to you, sort of thing, that's better than Schadenfreude. If you'll note, this one points down, so it's like you're wrong twice, and this one points out toward fruition. So the reason you get like Dajjal, or like that whole sequence of, they recognized it in Catholicism, like I do something nice for you and then I pay you, or you do something mean to me and then I owe you, sort of thing. That's the bullshit DS. Fabrication, Maya. So more or less it comes in terms of terminology of converting an unknown to a known. And the reason that works is quantum physics. If something is unknown, it resounds or exists, is available to the self in forms of a wave of potential, rather than when something is known, it collapses to a singularity. So the experiment deals with photons, which are light particles. So before you know, in a sense, where a light particle is going to go, it exists like a sun or a bomb that could be put anywhere. It's unlimited in a certain context. It has a weight. Photons have a weight, sort of thing, but then the information in it could be literally anything. So you could look at like that leaf, or you could look at meaning and memory is what we're talking about as we're good. So it's like a memory yet to happen corresponding to a meaning that you're running into, sort of thing. And that's how you feel your way around the world. That's how you start to get echoes. That's how you get self-awareness and self-respect. That's how you self-teach. That's how teachers learn. That's how you experiment correctly and don't interfere with other people. It's how you gauge things. It's how you have a feeling of the capacity of the self, how you know your feelings on a subject, how you use the chemicals in your body. Emotions are barometers of the present, sort of thing. And then you can take that to, this one means survival, this one means prayer, this one means sex, this one means food, this one means, sorcery, this one means necromancy. You can understand things that way because it's all coming back here. So, as it moves from a context of this is you, you're born like this, you're born naked and crying into the world, sort of St. Francis style or Buddhist style, there's nothing there, sort of thing. So, the way that it works, Buddhism's kind of like a stripped down or simplified version of everything that's before, running into everything that's next. So if you're in the realm of being right or being a prophet, really anything on the scale, you can get to it via Buddhism. It's kind of that great line sort of thing. So as we backtrack, you started Buddhism, there's stuff back here that you would have no sense of awareness about unless you were a skilled Buddhist first. So, essentially, what the Antichrist stuff deals with, let's take things they yell at, typically masturbation, sex, self-identity, sort of thing, because they're in the business of making slaves. So anything not pushed to the point of actualism or anything like that is good for them because they can control you. So that's how you get like your bullshit politic from the KKK, and it goes into Nazism, which is kind of like the usury sort of thing. It's a scale of psychicness. The usury of psychicness, then you get to Catholicism, where it should be directed in only a certain way. You run into Hinduism, and Hinduism kind of takes you from one side of the quantum gate to the other side of the quantum gate, and it's from a male and female perspective, and it deals with points and spectrums. It's correct. And so it gets you kind of across that threshold into Hasidism, which is the entire scale of knowledge of Judaic effort and philosophy and politic, everything sorted correctly, as it occurs. And it can be viewed in either a religious light or a strictly non-religious light, which was like the operating context, basically, of the Soviet Union. Why that worked perfectly. So, basically, if you imagine getting yourself off or being in love or relaxing, it all kind of goes to the same place, this higher articulate sort of thing. As you're doing that, you yourself are unknown. And the unknown qualities that you're looking at exist in this sort of higher capacity. It's one channel, it's one direct thing, it's a singular thing. You're the thing that it's looking at. There's no difference between that. So if you put a gauge on it, it's like, well, this one occurs here and this one occurs here. It's one thing. Because this one occurring here and this one occurring here is a totalitarian duality, polarized context, which can only bring you back to here with bullshit TS. So as you look into the unknown and you become this wave of potential, you become large, you become understood, you become knowing, you become, and that's why they would crimp that in old times. Sort of thing. There's some really disgusting religious people in history, and so if they could squash that, the Catholic Church has been the enemy of information for years, of science and everything else. The Anglican Church, was like 400 times worse. And they sit there and they miser the shit. Everything's a secret. Everybody's dumb. Everything's a secret. Don't tell secrets. Like this uber paranoia. And then the Catholic one's just like uber violent. Everything's offensive. Everything's not itself. Everything is this weird schizophrenia where the items in your universe interact against you. So you park a symbol here, and then all of a sudden you're scared of the color purple, or red dandelions, or pink elephants, or whatever. That's how that works. You put like a crimp on it, and then that's it, like a wave breaker or something like that. And this is going on inside of you. This is nobody else's business. This is just straight up invasion of initial space and molestation of religious rights for literally no purpose but creating doom and slavery. And then they got them to admit that point, and that's where the whole traitor context comes from that they used in like World War II, sort of thing. Because from the scale of actualism, why would you want to know an incorrect thing and then know that as yourself? So then you're like, oh, I am my mental illness, or I am this trauma, or I am this incompletion, basically. And leaves a hole, and then people can kind of molest that and like get in your face about it and that sort of thing. whereas you could just do it correctly once the first time and then never have to revisit it. And that's transcendence. You can't transcend something until it's a fact and you understand it. You don't know what understanding is until you're a full-fledged Buddhist. So whenever you go from Zen mastery into Tao, which is like a Hasidism, you want to make it one thing. As you're going back into here, if you don't have a grasp on what understanding itself is, which is a little different from Judaic knowledge or of righteous memory. It's a little bit different. If you don't know what understanding is, talking about things like place, like totally abuse, know your place, sort of thing. It just means don't do Schadenfreude. Don't be impolite. Don't do Schadenfreude. There's a list of things that is in religious and non-religious. It's the same thing, thanks to Hasidism. So if you don't have a grasp on what understanding is, I went too far, I fasted too long, I saw myself into this equation, I was distracted by something finite, rather than, looking at something final. I was being weak, I was being unjust, I was being corrupted, if you don't have a grasp on what understanding is, you're going to get lost back coming into here. When they did this originally, way back in ancient Egypt, pyramid days, they had all of this right, is the thing. Is what they found out later, is that all of the stuff from Egypt goes perfectly into the Buddhism goes perfectly into the Islam. So you have this entire scale, and then there's me at the end of Islam, basically with Tao and drift Buddhism going back through constitutionality, which gets you to Egypt. And then there's a little piece over here, and that's basically where Egypt ran into the Antichrist, and that's where Osama bin Laden happened. And he won that argument, which was kind of weird because it went against kind of the American policy regarding a lot of the World War II stuff, which is why we're looking at a lot of the white nationalist stuff now, which is just as unacceptable as the Antichrist in, most places. Can't get better than Catholic, and they're certainly not Catholic, is one way of looking at it. And they use Hinduism. Basically, the Antichrist gig is to use Hinduism to basically put a holy war up into the sphere and then network it out, spread it out, sort of thing. And then you flatball at Hasidism, and you just do like one of these, I give up, I'm Christian, I'm sorry, and go back and do the exact same thing with roll the tape. So it's the roll the tape people that is the organized crime syndicate creating slavery and whatever else. And so the idea is that whenever you get to here, basically, and then you want to keep moving forward because there's nothing else to do, sort of thing, but you want to know everything that's back here and everything that you are, the DS world, the mistresses, what gets you off, what turns you on, what moves you, what makes you stay, what is your belief, so to speak. Where's that line where now you're converting basically energy that exists in yourself to a higher ramification of existence, which is constitutionality. It's when you become your spirit, but you're the one who initiates that. You have to do it through your will. Your will has to be not misinformed, as in working down, working backwards, unlearning. And then what we found out is that it's not a thermodynamic. The law of thermodynamics states like you have an axe, basically. You take one thing from one axe and put it in the other axe, and something from this axe has to go over to this axe. God and religion and constitutionality works because of natural motion. This is not something that humans invent. This is not something that we control. This is not something that we decide. This is not something that requires our permission. This is natural motion. Some people want to view it in terms of natural decay, but that's kind of a little more opine than factual sort of thing. So to get that weird haze, that sheen. So the truth of luck, or the truth of success, or the truth of creation, is that everything already moves that way. We have time, we have natural motion, we have natural displacement, and then we have like a constitutional unit. So you don't need to do the Schadenfreude, you don't need to do, it's just this little block that, kind of keeps moving forward, that your soul's in, or your spirit's in, you are your soul, sort of, and then you chase your spirit. It's your destiny, it's your pursuit of happiness. That's all of that. You kind of get up to the plane of this sort of thing. Your spirit never leaves there if you're enlightened. Basically, enlightenment deals with kind of a lot of different things, but you park like your spirit animal sort of thing at the North Pole, so to speak, and it never moves. It's always looking for something greater and good and everything else. It doesn't move, and that's the semblance of the hierarchy of angels, so to speak, of the people who are enlightened, of the people who are all on the same side, or the people who are omniscient, or clairvoyant. That's where all that goes on. But you have to get there first. And it goes through your own will. But, just like the Thoreau quote, the universe conspires with you sort of thing. There's 1.5 billion tricks. That's where, religion is, possibly endless sort of thing. I posit 6. There's 6 more actual religions that you could write out. But that's where everything looks like, the same thing. But it all still gets, and it has to achieve the same principle of going way up there, way out there, which has nothing to do with creating a slave or politics or reputation or doubting, basically. You'll get like in Buddhism it deals with doubt and doubting sort of thing, and doubt is its own event, unconnected to the actual event. So if you're doubting an event, then the event overrides the doubt, and so fear is stupid. And then if you're just doubting, then it's irrational. So if you phrase things in terms of the question, you'll always be learning, and it reduces all of that to a non-event. You'll get those issues because you're growing now, thinking, that's dangerous, right? So with the Antichrist stuff, and with slavery and whatever other thing, the easiest way to get up into that unknown characteristics, you'll have like a reflection sort of thing. It'll just be or a spear or a sphere or a box or a triangle or however you want to look at it. Depends on what you're dealing with, what works better. Easiest way to do that is via the emotional chain, which is your water sign, which deals with psychicness. Basically, this is a whole graph of psychicness. The most isolated act in the world is sexual. So if you really want to put yourself in a parameter to be able to hear yourself and understand yourself, the sexual context is the easiest and best way to do that. It's not for something. You're not like buying something. You're not like whoring. You're not like selling something out to get somewhere. You're not trading. It deals with the end of the fruition sort of thing. This is the event. this is where the event goes to and ends. And that's the furthest extent of your parameter sort of thing. Somewhere in there is something that you don't know. So their whole idea is that if we can get this really perverse, why does the KKK act like ever hear of like a Christian fucking, this is what that is. And it deals with taking things from a psych context and then implanting them way past the grade of initial space and constitutionality via like fear is the number one way of doing it. So like drugging you, or you'll get those bundists who like come in and like start coughing on you and stuff like that, just interrupting you. Distraction is destruction in terms of memory and meaning. So putting their, opines where they don't at all belong nor make sense, you can sit there, and we've done this for thousands of years, traced all of that out, and it comes to Schadenfreude. What's bad for you is good for me. And that's strictly against, constitutionality, military policy, professional policy, house policy, standard interaction, any religion, any business, any learning, any schooling, any of it. It's totally and completely wrong, and it's its own thing. It's 0.03% of an energy of a person, and it catalogs to and corresponds to nothing. It's like the dumpster, basically. And if you know anything about memory and meaning, once it's set, you leave it alone, not knock it over, not pervert it. So their whole thing with bullshit DS, pecking order comes in here, your feudalism, shit like that. It deals with taking what you would be purchasing with yourself, get it, slavery context, and then saying, no, you can't buy that, no, you can't buy that, no, you can't have that, no, you can't have that, no, you can't have that. So, like, an off-coordinate opinion about the sum of a potential, so already they're judging you. There's your third party, and there goes tri-binary. Constitutionality goes right out the window, just like that, just by the advent of you showing up. The entire grid collapses. It's no longer something unknown existing as a wave of potential. It's existing as something known, and what is known is false. So now you have a weird whatever going absolutely nowhere sort of thing. So they get you to waste energy and track all that out. Oh, look, the stream ends here, your bullshit. Oh, look, this ends here, your bullshit. This ends here, your bullshit. And that's roll the tape. And you just sit there and waste energy, waste energy, waste energy. You're not actually learning. You're being conditioned. And they do that on purpose because whenever you're doing these particular sacred ceremonies, the idea is if they can get something inside of your name sort of thing, as you go down the road and they continue doing roll the tape with new people, they have you under control. And then they go steps further with like KKK, and it's like if they don't have you under control, then you're bad. So it's this entire process of blackmail for slavery, which is then what Mormonism picked up and does the whole calendar. The molested psychological systematic, the whatever it was, quad duality psychology, the treasonous terroristic philosophy, or the treason philosophy, and then the terroristic sociology, and that's their loop. And their organized crime, they sit around and move slaves through it all day. That's what's being prosecuted, yeah. So, this is how Judaism, Satanism, and Egyptology all work together. So you'd have like your Hasidism, your Buddhism, your Hinduism, and your Catholicism are all okay. Nazism, no. KKK, no. Antichrist, no. And then all of it's from the basis of Egypt, which was totally correct. It's like a symbolism of black, basically. It's like the whole concert of black law the whole way through time, so like 5,000 years old, through Osama bin Laden, straight into the CIA. Like, what is the pentagram? What is all that? That's completed now. And that's across the religions, and then that's constitutional itself, or constitutionality. So it's either they come to us and do that correctly, or they're wrong, is the switch in polarity, because, and we got all that, it flipped that hard, because they were doing Schadenfreude toggle, which is this or this, which is not intelligence. There's no such thing. There's nothing that exists like that. Everything exists in a spectrum. Black and white are our ideals. And you have this chunk of information in the center that is a single thing, basically. You can pick a certain point and have the whole thing, rectified or whatever. Yeah, so that's why constitutionality and why that's unconstitutional.